In this episode 83 of the Daily Hustle Show, we close down the series of the Jeff Bezos principles for continued company growth. This is part 3 of the series. This is going to be huge for you and your business to distill all this information into those action steps. And also, we talk about comet hunting.
Broadcasting from the box that rocks and Thrive15.com world headquarters, it's the Daily Hustle with Daniel McKenna.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is episode 83 of the Daily Hustle. Over to my left, on his 4th cup of coffee this morning, Marshall F. Morris. Over here, Daniel McKenna. This is part 3 of the series, the Jeff Bezos Principles for Continued Company Growth. If you have not seen the other episodes or heard the other episodes, go check out episode 81 and 82. In this one, episode 83, we're going to get into the last of the starter pack of essentials to ward off day 1 death. We'll be talking about high-velocity decision-making. Marshall Morris, how are you doing over there, man?
I'm doing not spectacularly, not sensationally, but extraordinarily today.
You're doing extraordinarily.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
That is incredible. You know what else is incredible?
What?
The episode number 83.
Okay. Why is it so incredible?
Well, let me tell you. I will tell you. Did you know the Messier, I think it's Messier, I think I'm saying that, I think it's because he's French. The Messier object M83, also a band name, perhaps you've heard of M83, a magnitude 8.5 spiral galaxy in the constellation Hydra, also known as the Southern Pinwheel Galaxy. But here's why this fact was interesting to me here. Charles Messier, French astronomer, 1771, he was a comet hunter. What did he do? I hunt comets. He was Charles Messier. And was frustrated by objects which resembled but were not comets, so he started making a list of them. So he made a list of over 100. I don't remember how many there were, but that's why it's M something. M17, M24, M83. There's a band called M83. Perhaps you've heard of them. If you have not heard of them, they're pretty good. Talking about the spiral galaxy M83 in the constellation Hydra, and he basically made this list because he got tired of wasting his time tracking these things that weren't comets but looked kind of like comets. It's like, oh, dang it, that's M83. I'm putting it on the list.
Going on the list.
Did you know 83 is the highest UHF channel on older televisions made before the late 1970s, and that newer televisions could only go up to channel 69 because they assigned the other channels 70 through 83, they assigned those to cell phone service in the 70s through the 80s. So like if your grandma might have had a TV that was like, you know, the old push buttons. My grandma had a TV that was push buttons, all black and white, up in Idaho, up in Caldwell, Idaho. Sits in this room with all this like super old furniture that nobody sits on. You had to push the buttons, right? Well, that only goes up to channel 69 if it was made after the 70s. Before the 70s, it could go all the way up to 83. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
No.
Learned that.
Did you know that when someone reaches the age of 83, they might celebrate a second bar mitzvah?
Wow. Second one.
Yeah.
And
you're probably Jewish if you're going to go for the second one, but I mean, if we make it to 83, we might as well throw ourselves a bar mitzvah.
Wow.
I don't see why not.
You could.
And lastly, did you know Hall of Famer and 4-time Super Bowl champion linebacker Ted Hendricks wore the number 83, and he blocked a mind-boggling 25 field goals over his 15-season pro career. Named the 1970s All-Decade and NFL's 75th anniversary teams. Blocked 25 field goals.
That's a lot of field goals.
That's a lot of field goals to block. In fact, the place I found this stat from called it mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling.
It doesn't quite boggle my mind, but I mean it's impressive.
Yeah.
You know what else boggles my mind? High velocity decision making.
There you get it. There it is.
And that was a segue. It's a clean segue. Clean segue. So let's get into this. This is the last of the starter pack of essentials of warding off day 1 death that we've been talking about from Jeff Bezos. High velocity decision making. We'll continue along this path. This is more from his letter to his shareholders. He says, Day 2 companies make high-quality decisions but they make high-quality decisions slowly. To keep the energy and dynamicism of... Dynamicism? Did I say that right? I think I did. Dynamicism? To keep it dynamic. How about that?
Ooh.
I'll rewrite the sentence. To keep the energy and the dynamic of day one, you have to somehow make high-quality, high-velocity decisions. Easy for startups and very challenging for large organizations. The senior team at Amazon is determined to keep our decision-making velocity high. Speed matters in business. Plus, a high-velocity decision-making environment is more fun, too. We don't know all the answers, but here are some thoughts. 1. First, never use a one-size-fits-all decision-making process. Many decisions are reversible two-way doors. Those decisions can use a lightweight process. For those, so what if you're wrong? 2. Second, most decisions should probably be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had. If you wait for 90%, in most cases, you're probably being slow. Plus, either way, you need to be good at quickly recognizing and correcting bad decisions. If you're good at course correcting, being wrong may be less costly than you think, whereas being slow is going to be expensive for sure. Marshall, what if this thought pattern here, what if this sticks out to you? Making high-quality decisions with high velocity, and Bezos talking about most decisions made with 70% of the information you wish you had. Thoughts?
So what you have to do is you got to be able to make the decision and live with the consequences. Jack Welch, he calls that edge, the ability to make tough decisions, okay? And so specifically, everybody is trying to wait on the same unknown information, and so the only wrong answer is no answer. And so specifically, you got to make that decision understanding that everybody's playing with the same inability to understand the entire process, the entire action. And so the opportunity cost of waiting might be such that you will miss out on great big opportunities. And if you're off or if you're wrong, because you've made the decision early and because you've decided to take action early, therefore you can course correct if necessary early on in the process rather at the end of the process or right before a deadline.
Do you see this very often? Do you see business owners, entrepreneurs, people in general waiting around for more information than they currently have, which isn't in general isn't a bad thing, but they have most of the information, they don't have all the information, and now they're going to sit and not actually do anything, not make any change. When they know they need to make a change one way or the other, they sit there in the middle waiting for that magical day where 100% of the information is in. Do you see this very often?
Yeah, I mean, what it comes back to is the lean startup method. Okay, there's a book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. He says that there's 4 steps to really the entrepreneurial process. You got to define, you got to act, then you got to measure, and then you got to refine. Define, act, measure, refine. And so entrepreneurs can easily get caught in the defining moment, or maybe they just want to keep refining, or maybe they're all about analytics and all they want to do is analyze and measure. But one of the frequently missed steps is act. You just got to act. You got to define and then act. The next step is act. So once you've set the course, you got to just act upon it.
Also thought it was interesting how, multiple times he talked about recognizing bad decisions and quickly course correcting. He didn't say don't make bad decisions. He said recognize when you make a bad decision and quickly course correct. So their whole attitude is, okay, we have most of the information. Based on most of the information, what should we do? Well, let's do this. Cool, let's do it. All right, we're in, let's do it. And then a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months, 6 months later. You know what? We were wrong. That was a bad idea. That was terrible. Let's cancel that. Let's go the other way. Do you see that ever? If we're talking about making decisions without 100% of the information, which is going to need to be the norm, if you're talking about keeping up with a fast-paced environment, trying to keep pushing your company forward, making decisions with high velocity, talk about quickly course correcting when you see it's a bad idea, and why some business owners might see that as a sign of weakness or a sign of poor leadership or a sign of not being good enough of what they do to command respect. But Bezos is saying, we're going to make bad decisions. We just have to quickly course correct. Talk about that.
Yeah, as a business owner, you got to have the humility to be able to admit when you're wrong, and that is a sign of a leader. So being able to admit when you're wrong and then moving forward beyond that, going into the new course of action. But what you'll notice about a lot of successful business owners is they never stop. They never stop moving. They're continuing to move forward. They're moving forward. They're tacking and jibing. They keep moving forward, and that's important for these businesses, for these industries where it's necessary that you're constantly adapting and constantly changing. So to that end, yeah, you got to be able to admit when something isn't working, and when you're tracking with the metrics and you're tracking the success and the results based on metrics, those metrics are non-emotional, and so being able to take the emotion out of it really is very, very helpful for a lot of business owners that are maybe struggling with this and maybe stubborn to make those edits or make those changes. Is just looking at the specific numbers. That's what makes it less emotional for business owners.
So the first was never use a one-size-fits-all decision-making process. I think especially larger organizations, they say, well, let's bring it up to the committee, sign this form, we'll have the 4 board members vote on this, then we'll send that to the high elk, and the high elk will ruminate on it for 12 days. And after the 12th day, when the sun rises, assuming there's no, there's a whole, it comes from good intentions. It comes from, let's just make sure we cross all our T's and dot all our I's, make sure but he's saying, don't use that for every decision making, just make decisions. Use the information you have, make decisions. That's easier for small businesses because there's usually one dude or 2 dudes, or maybe 3 ladies and a dude, or maybe it's just 4 ladies. They're just it's a small team, right? 2, most decisions should be made with somewhere around 70% of the information you wish you had. And third, use the phrase disagree and commit. We're gonna be stepping on some toes here. Gonna be kind of giving the old ear pull. Here we go. This phrase will save a lot of time. If you have conviction on a particular direction, even though there's no consensus, it's helpful to say, look, I know we disagree on this, but will you gamble with me on it? Disagree and commit. By the time you're at this point, no one can know the answer for sure, and you'll probably get a quick yes. This isn't one way. If you're the boss, you should do this too. I disagree and commit all the time. We recently greenlit a particular Amazon Studios original. I told the team my view. Debatable whether it would be interesting enough, complicated to produce, the business terms aren't that good, and we have a lot of other opportunities. They had a completely different opinion and wanted to go ahead. I wrote back right away with, I disagree and commit, and I hope it becomes the most watched thing we've ever made. Consider how much slower the decision cycle would have been if the team had actually had to convince me rather than get my commitment. Note what this example is not. It's not me thinking to myself, well, these guys are wrong and missing the point, but this isn't worth me chasing. It's a genuine disagreement of opinion, a candid expression of my view, a chance for the team to weigh my view, and a quick, sincere commitment to go their way. And given that this team has already brought home 11 Emmys, 6 Golden Globes, and 3 Oscars, I'm just glad they let me in the room at all. A lot of stuff to unpack here, Marshall. Firstly, what does this say about the necessity of hiring A players, of hiring people that are either A, good at their job, or B, have the capacity to understand and be good at the job? 2, the ability for the business owner to trust the people they hire, provided they have shown the ability they can perform, even if it isn't necessarily the idea of the business owner. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, you got to hire A players, and you got to put your high-quality team in position to do well. So if you're hiring A players, you got to put them in a position to do what they were meant to do, what they're skilled and what they're trained to do. And so if you do this, then you allow them to flourish with their ideas and their successes. And as a business owner, it's going to be impossible for you to know the outcomes and know all the information in order to make the decision at the appropriate time. And so he has to trust, Jeff Bezos has to trust that his team is going to put them in a position to win more times than not. And their record, their history, the fact of their successes leading up to this point, he has to trust them and say, hey, okay, I disagree with the progress. I disagree with moving forward with this idea, but I'm going to commit to it because I know that you need my support one way or another. So I'm going to support you even though I disagree. And then at the sign of it not working, then we can make the decision to course correct. But he put his he put his team in position to be successful by hiring A players, not B players, not C players, but because the entire team is of A players, he can confidently say, okay, I trust you guys to take this to fruition. Then the second thing is the ability for the business owner to trust the people that they've hired. Okay, it's really, really, really necessary to trust the people that you have hired, because otherwise you're going to consistently undermine them. You're going to consistently, they won't be confident because you're not confident. And even, if the business owner disagrees, you got to be steadfast in your belief on it's going to work. And so for A players to continually be putting forward new ideas, that's great. And whether the A player's idea gets moved forward or the business owner's idea gets moved forward, you got to all be rowing in the same direction and on the same page, regardless of you disagree. So disagree and commit.
I think a lot of it has to do with the idea of scale and time as well, right? Like, it's not possible for you as one human to do everything. So if you want your business to do big things, you need to be able to effectively delegate and have other people make decisions and have other good people on your team that can push the ball forward, right? And I think that's what Jeff is talking about here. And I would say it's similar to like a football team. Football team, as the guy, entrepreneur, young entrepreneur, whatever, you might see the quarterback of that team and be like, man, I want to be like the quarterback. I want to be the one calling the plays, making the passes, making the plays. I want to be the quarterback. I want to lead the team. And then maybe as you get further on, more successful in your career, you're like, okay, I'm going to be the coach. I'm going to have a stud quarterback. I'm going to have a great team. I'm going to actually call the plays. I'm going to set up the strategy. Because I can't be the quarterback. I can't throw the ball and catch the ball. I can't block as well. I need to have good people in place to do that stuff. But I'll set up the strategy. And then really, as you start growing your business, as you get to that level, then you're more like, I'm going to be the GM or the owner. I'm going to have people on my team that are the GM, that are the coach, that are the players. I can't be on the field making every play. I can't be the one calling every play and do these things. I need to hire good people. I need to set the vision. This is the vision. This is the way we want to go. I need to hire good people that can fulfill that vision. Do you see that at all? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to put people that have the same alignment as you, have the same core values, have the same culture, have the same vision, have the same mission for the company. And when you hire for those things versus rather skills and requirements and different credentials, then you always end up with people that share the same vision as you and working towards the same goal.
And the benefit of being the entrepreneur that is the owner, if the coach or the quarterback or the wide receiver gets off of your vision completely to the point where it's detrimental, you can always be the one like, we're getting a new quarterback. We're getting a new coach. Right? Like, you get to make that final call.
That's right.
Steve Jobs quote, "It doesn't make sense to hire good people and tell them what to do. We hire good people so they can tell us what to do."
Boom, boom.
That was the third thing. Fourth, recognize true misalignment issues early and escalate them immediately. Sometimes teams have different objectives and fundamentally different views. They are not aligned. No amount of discussion, no number of meetings will resolve that deep misalignment. Without escalation, the default dispute resolution mechanism for this scenario is exhaustion. Whoever has the more stamina carries the decision. I've seen many examples of sincere misalignment at Amazon over the years. When we decided to invite third-party sellers to compete directly against us on our own product detail pages, that was a big one. Many smart, well-intentioned Amazonians were simply not at all aligned with the direction. The big decision set up hundreds of smaller decisions, many of which needed to be escalated to the senior team. You've worn me down, and it is an awful decision-making process. It's slow and de-energizing. Go for quick escalation instead. It's better. Marshall, what is Bezos talking about here? And have you seen this before where decisions were made just because people got tired of talking about it and got tired of arguing instead of based on the end goal or the user?
Yeah, and that's another reason for making decisions early. As soon as you can make a decision, go ahead and make it, because then you're not exhausted. And typically decisions that are made at the point of exhaustion are not always the best decisions. You need to make the decision when you have the clearest mind, the most unbiased amount of data, the most committed team members. You got to make that decision early, and as soon as it starts drifting, starts going away from it, you also make that course correction. You got to correct early, correct often. And so when you do this, you typically don't get to that, okay, you worn me down, let's go ahead and move forward with this particular decision, just so that you stop bringing it up. Rather, you get the decisions that are made. Okay, I understand we just moved forward early. Maybe it was a little bit too early, but at least at this point now we can make a course correction.
And I think he talks about finding out where there's deep misalignment, or maybe there's a member on your team or a function of your team that is rowing a different direction than you are. I'll give you a perfect example. This is about as perfect as you can get with a small business.
Okay.
So for the wedding photo business, we have a certain amount of systems we can book on a certain day because we have that many systems, and that's what we plan on having, right? Like, we have this many kits of photography gear. We can go out and do this many weddings. Well, let's just say the number is 10. Easy round number 10. Let's say it's 10. Well, if I'm the guy that's in charge of doing training, and I'm the guy that's in charge of having people ready to shoot, high quality people at those shoots, not having, not getting more people in, which would create more work for me, right? If I'm that guy, then potentially I only want to sell 6 or 7 or 8 of those packages as opposed to 10. Because 10 might involve me having to train more people, might involve me having to interview more people, might involve me having to even cut some people that could fill that spot, but I know they're not really good enough, so I need to cut them, which means I need to hire somebody else, which means I need to train somebody else. Like, my workload changes drastically if I have to get an extra 20, 30% more people ready for those shoots. Whereas the sales guy is thinking, I can sell 2 or 3 more things. I can make more money on this day by selling 2 or 3 more things. So and that's like a very small company, right? Of 6 people. So if the sales team is like, let's sell as much stuff as we can because we can make money, and the team that's in charge of doing training and fulfillment, all that stuff's like, I hope they only sell 4 or 5 because that way I don't have to do quite as much work. And then it comes down to a date where it's busy, and I'm like, can we book this thing? And then this team's going to be like, nope, don't do it. And then this team's going to be like, yeah, book it. Let's do it. That would be a scenario of where they have 2 different alignments, 2 different thought patterns of this is good for me, where people could be rowing the boat in separate ways. What would that do to your business? And if you were the general manager, if you were the owner of that business, you're the coach calling the plays, what would you do in that scenario? You
got to just call a play and then make sure that everybody understands why you called the play. You got to make sure that everybody understands why you made a decision in a specific direction, and then get everybody on the same page. And you got to put an end to that, because when you have different thought patterns, different groups of thinking, different groupthink within the same organization, then you end up having team members that start choosing sides, and that's not a good deal. So as a business owner, as a manager, as somebody that's in charge of the decision-making process, you yourself have to be the one to make a decision and live with it, so that the employees aren't the ones that are feeling like, hey, this group of people is ultimately making the decision, or this group of people, and then it's your job to make sure that everybody's on the same page and moving in the right direction.
And I think that's what Jeff was talking about, escalating those misalignment issues to get everybody on the same page. Okay, so here's the last little paragraph here he had in this letter, the shareholder letter. This is for all the business owners and entrepreneurs out there that are listening or watching this right now. He says, so, have you settled only for decision quality, or are you mindful of decision velocity too? Are the world's trends tailwinds for you? Are you falling prey to proxies, or do they serve you? And most important of all, are you delighting customers? We can have the scope and capabilities of a large company and the spirit and the heart of a small one, but we have to choose it. Any last thoughts here, Marshall, for the listeners/watchers at home?
Yeah, Jeff Bezos, one of the great decision makers in modern business. And so if you're looking for somebody to model your decision-making process after, Amazon.com and Jeff Bezos is an incredible role model for you. So, make decisions early and often and for the right reasons.
That was episode 83 of the Daily Hustle Show. Over there, for Coffee Marshall. Over here, Daniel McKenna. We'll see you next time on episode 84 of the Daily Hustle. Boom!